Let's make a plaster cast of an animal footprint. Right, if we're going to make some plaster casts, we need a bag to carry our stuff in. And I found this is a really useful bag that I found in the camping shop. I think it's a cold tour. And you can put everything in there pretty well. Now the first thing that you want is the plaster. And I would buy one of these containers that's airtight, otherwise the moisture in the atmosphere will get to it and the plaster will set before you want it to. Now you notice that I'm wearing gloves. You notice that I'm wearing latex gloves. Now that's because plaster can be irritant, and the other good thing to wear will be a pair of safety glasses. Might not be a bad idea, so latex gloves and safety glasses. And the other thing is plaster makes a dreadful mess on your clothes, so don't wear your best things when you're doing it. Now then, you're going to need to have a mould to hold the plaster in place, and if you cut some strips of card like this, then they can be fitted to the shape that you want at a particular time and held together with paper clips like this. It's an old-fashioned way of doing it, but it's very effective. And that can be pushed into the mud over the animal print. Now an alternative way of doing it is to cut some pieces from a cola bottle or something like that, and that similarly can be pushed down into the mud. Now you're going to need to mix up your plaster, so to have that you'll want a bottle of water. Make sure you take a bottle of water with you to do that, and you need a measuring jug as well. Now I've got two things for measuring here. First of all, the measuring jug for measuring out the water into there, and secondly a 30 ml mixing spoon, and doing it accurately each time will give you a much better result. Now you don't want to do the mixing up in there, and what you'll need a container to do the mixing in. You measure out 300 ml of water into the jug, and then that goes into your mixing pot. You're then going to add your plaster, and I did 5 of these at a time, so into the water 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then mix it up. And I bought a couple of cheap spoons for this. Don't use your mum's best stuff. Mix it up really thoroughly, and then when it's all mixed up, add another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I found that adding 18 of those to 300 ml of water will give you a really good mixture. And you'd have got your cardboard ready on the footprint, and you can pour that mixture into the mould. And it will take about half an hour to set, and just a little bit before the end of the half hour, have something like a screwdriver and scratch on the back of it the date and what you think the print is and any other details. So when the plaster sets properly, it'll have all the details on the back there. Don't forget, as with all these things, you should have your notebook and pencil to write down what you've done. And very importantly, don't forget your lunch. Very importantly, don't forget to take lunch with you. Hey, sorry. Don't forget to take your lunch with you. So I've smoothed the mud down on a path the evening before, and we've got 2 sets of footprints. The first one is a fox with the 2 toes pointing forwards, and the second one is the hooves of the muntjac deer. There we are, 2 hoof prints. Now the first thing we've got to do is to place our strips of cardboard held with paper clips and push them firmly into the mud. I think this is where the cardboard is better than the sections of a drinks bottle. Make sure you push them in as firmly as possible so the plaster won't leak out. Now we've got all our equipment assembled. The first thing to do will be to measure out the water. Check it accurately. And now the plaster. Using the small scoop, we're going to add between 5 and 6 scoops of plaster to our water. Don't forget to carefully mix it each time and only ever add plaster to water. Mix it up all thoroughly to get rid of all the lumps as far as possible. And when it's to the consistency of single cream and not before, then it's ready to be poured into the moulds. Try and pour it equally between the two moulds if you can. Now the key word, once you've done this, is patience. You must be patient. If you try and remove it before it's set properly, the plaster will break. So I recommend 30 minutes. Leave it for 30 minutes. Make sure that cardboard is firmly pushed into the mud. So go away for 30 minutes, do something else. Now, towards the end of that time, use something like a screwdriver to mark on the back the date and then the other information you want to before the plaster has fully set. Now I've used the back of the spoon. It's had a good 30 minutes now. Use the back of the spoon, work around the base of the plaster to lever it off the mud. Some mud will be left sticking to the plaster. Now take it home, and whatever you do, don't do this in the kitchen. I would certainly wear gloves because you've got mud and goodness knows what germs and things are in that mud. Right, here is the plaster and it's still got some mud stuck to it. Use an old toothbrush or an old nail brush, and I'm doing this in the water butt outside. You can be quite firm with it because the plaster is set solid. Gradually work at it and get rid of the mud, and the print will begin to appear. See the footprint beginning to appear as you clear the mud away? So that's the fox footprint. There we are. And now for the muntjac footprint. Do exactly the same thing. When you've cleaned them thoroughly, got as much mud off as possible, put them in a warm place. With Mum's permission, they can go in the airing cupboard or somewhere warm to dry them out properly. There we are, muntjac prints. Now when they're thoroughly dried, you can do one of two things. Either leave them, like the one on the left, or like the one on the right, the fox footprint, use some black paint to outline the print. It's entirely up to you. There you are, you've made a permanent record of those footprints. Here are some places on the park that get typically muddy, where you might like to try to look for some footprints and make some plaster casts for yourselves.